Actually, I was waiting for the last more than an hour for this session. Uh, I actually got reminded of one small story. I just wanted to make the situation a little lighter. Like there were two monkeys, and there was some tension test which was happening. Like they were giving. Uh, Initially, they started. They were in a lever, and they were getting electric shock every 1 hour. For one monkey, it was increased from 1 hour to 2 hour to 3 hour, and from another monkey it was reduced. And for the monkey who it was reduced from 1 hour to 30 minutes to finally it became 1 second. And it was found that this monkey who was getting current every 1 second was healthier than the other monkey who was waiting for another 4 hours to get a current. So, so just a lighter note, but when this organizers asked me to talk something, I was just thinking that what do I speak. When I saw the context was resilience. So I was just thinking that I was thinking about resilience. At the same time, I was trying to build on certain things. So I thought that it gives me a chance to build certain things and actually really kind of kill multiple birds in one stone. So guys, what I would speak something is like let me set the context. All of you know the last Jan this World Economic Forum happened, and every year they say they flag top 10 global risk, and it has been consistently for the last 10 years. Cyber risk or cyber security risk has been there in the top 10 global risk. But last 2 years the narrative is little different. Last year it was cyber security failure was the risk, and this year the three things was they have flagged. One is that geopolitical context where there will be no inhibition to do cyber attack. Another is the emerging technologies. I think a lot of guys are talking about that the rising of ML, rising of ChatGPT and all sort of things may influence the cyber risk in the next 1-2 years. And another thing what they have said about the cyber laws and regulations that would lead to increase in cyber resilience. So cyber resilience is kind of getting discussed in multiple forums. So I was just thinking that, see, more and more all of us have been talking about risk. I think guys who have come from a finance angle, I have spent more than 20 years in finance. So I'm a banker who understands technology, not a technologist who understands banking. So I always feel that the concepts of risk sooner or later will get applied to cyber risk. The concept of financial risk will get applied to the financial risk, and it has been happening. If you see, multiple things we have taken from financial risk. So something which is extremely important in financial risk is what is called stress testing of the risk. They actually do a stress test of the risk. Everybody does that. All financial, and this is not a new practice. It has been there for ages. Everybody does. It's a very, very mature practice. So I just wanted to do that thing. It typically happens that when I go to the board to present, incidentally it happens that I actually follow the financial risk. The financial risk guys they will first talk, and after that they will ask the cyber risk guys to talk. So they will talk about mark to market, they will talk about stress testing. Then my time come, the moment I start my narratives, my explanation, the vulnerability, the risk and all sort of things. The syntaxes sometimes are not that much understood by the people, but things have changed now. People have started understanding also cyber security. But what I'm trying to say is time for us to think that what is that stress testing and how can apply that stress testing to cyber. So before that, I did little bit of study in the old psychology, what is stress. If you look at stress, to manage stress, there are three interventions. There is a primary intervention, secondary intervention, and there is a tertiary intervention. In the primary intervention, when the stress is coming, we should know how to manage the stress. That means we would prevent the stress, not manage the stress. Actually, we have to take some intervention to make sure that stress is prevented. So it's essentially a preventive control. Coming to the secondary intervention, we are actually thinking that we should have responses to modify and to respond to the stress. It means that stress has come to us and we should make sure that the responses to the stress is less. And third thing is that we have some bad effect because of the stress, and we should make sure now that we manage those things. So the first thing is a preventive control, second thing is both preventive and detective, and the third thing is essentially a corrective control. So from this, I just wanted to take you to what is the difference between stress and resilience. If you look at the first one, what is the primary intervention and the secondary intervention, they are very closely related. First thing is to reduce the intensity of the stressor, while the latter actually provides a coping mechanism. Resilience is actually the first one. Resilience is we are trying to prevent something. Stress management is more aligned to the secondary techniques and the tertiary techniques. So when a typical example is, if you do a resilience test or any kind of test like a pen test or a vulnerability test. Vulnerability test is not pen test, and all sort of things you do. You actually try to don't go to a breaking point. We just test that whether you are vulnerable or not at certain point in time. We actually don't try to stress the system to find out whether it is breaking at this point or not. We are not doing that. Currently, we are not doing that. Let's see that how this is not a very new thing. Stress test is applicable everywhere. Financial stress test, I said, entire balance sheet, your asset, all the portfolio goes for a stress testing. There is a guideline from Bank of International Settlement. Reserve Bank of India has a comprehensive guideline on how to do stress testing. So stress testing has been there in banking for a long time. Medical stress test, all of you know that we do stress test. You all know that in medical there is a very fundamental thing. We do stress test in medical science. Then we have critical infrastructure stress test, where we put infrastructure to certain limits, like earthquake limit, like some simulate some certain things. So those that is there. Manufacturing stress test is there. Socio-political stress test. So sometimes we create a situation to see whether people are reacting to the desired way or not. Example is like I would create a situations like COVID and see whether people are able to behave the way they are supposed to behave or not. So stress test has been there. Treadmill is a very regular, I said about medical, the example is a treadmill. You all know treadmill. That's actually when you go and do a stress test using a treadmill. Then what is the goal of the stress test? The goal is to understand that how the system responds to different amount of disruptions. How the disruptions are happening and how do you respond to these disruptions. Essentially disruptions. Different kind of disruptions which in cyber may happen anytime. So we should know that how much we are ready to, or how much we can tolerate, and what is our breaking point. In risk assessment, we have a point. We say that we define a risk and we say that we will test till that time. But in here, we are not doing that. We are actually trying to boil the ocean. How to do that? That's a different thing. In stress test, you have to boil the ocean. Today, just ask yourself a question. If you do a penetration test from outside or doing some kind of an assessment using the best of the consultants in the world, and they didn't find anything, would you be really sure that nothing can happen to you? very difficult, because you have not actually tested all the parameters and not gone to the extent of finding that if something multiple parameters go to the extreme, what would happen to me. The little difference between load test and your stress test, load test has a limit, you define the limit and do the load test, whereas stress test does not have any limit. Then where do you need the and just trying to give a definition of the stress test. It's actually a the essential definition is it wants to test the stability of a system, how the system performs, to determine the breaking point, to confirm that the simulation is accurate, because unless you do a right kind of simulations, you will not know that whether you are actually doing the right kind of stress test or not. And then you have to understand that what is the mode of the failure, how the failure is happening. Then what are the areas where stress test is required? Why do you need the stress test? The system which is very dynamic, we actually need a stress test. System where there are a lot of interdependencies, we need a stress test. System we are very important to the business, we need a stress test of that system. And system where there are a lot of unknown things, there also we need a stress test. So don't you think that all these attributes of this system is applicable to the cyber? If it is applicable to the cyber, so I think all of us should now think that how to really get started in terms of a stress test. So just to relate to yourself, let me give you one typical example. The example could be like how the customer acquisition or the profit of a company, or how much the profit will fall if there is a massive cyber attack to this company. I am making it too simple, but if this is the scenario, do you really test this kind of scenario in any of the organizations? We try to test that whether this vulnerability can be exploitable or not. There is a typical load testing scenario. If you talk about a stress testing scenario, you are actually defining a business case and then trying to find out if there is a cyber risk, how the business case will get affected. I don't have a solution for you, but I just want to flag these ideas, because sooner or later we have to do a stress test. Because I will tell you that there are a couple of organizations globally, they have started doing stress tests for cyber security, and it is getting more and more mandated by the organizations. So I just want to give you some kind of a framework, what was coming to my mind, and take feedback from all of you to build a stress test framework for my organization. So I have a selfish motive there. So how to get started? If you think of that, we should do a very, very comprehensive test, we should not reinvent the wheel. We should take a sector where it is fully mature. Fully means fully mature. It has been there for ages. That is the financial sector. So let's understand how do they do stress testing in financial sector. That not that we are not doing anything. Unknowingly we may be doing so many things. So let's collect what you are doing and what is missing. What in cyber, what you are doing in piecemeals and what is missing. And then develop a framework integrating all those things and then aligning with this sector, which is more mature. So try to do that. Then I just have the broad principle of stress testing, which is by a bank for international settlement, which is in Basel. How many of you know Basel or not? I don't know. Basel is a place in Switzerland where the Bank of International Settlement is there. More known for Basel Committee, people say the capital adequacy, Basel Committee and all sort of things. So that is actually a place, the name of the river is Basel actually. So there are 9 principles. They have fast buzzer. I'll go for wait for another buzzer. So there are 9 principles of stress test, which is it's a Bible for stress testing. Okay? Go through that. So I don't want to very, very clear. It actually follows the risk management principles, risk management philosophy. It tells that it has to only thing it is getting more and more business orientations. It is becoming more and more formal. Now let's see the current practices. What you do in the typical resiliency test, if you want to call it a stress test, what you do normally? We do a cyber drill. Cyber drill, what you see? We just see our preparedness to some extent. We do more tabletop exercise to some extent, see that if something happens, what is your preparedness? That's all. Then we do pen test, we do red teaming, we do threat hunting, various kinds of threat hunting, and we do breach attack simulations. We have certain kind of playbook, we run those playbooks and try to find out whether we are able to, they are able to success or not. But the fact that in an environment, you cannot do it to the extent you want to do it to make yourself feel that yes, it cannot affect me, because your environment is production environment, and you cannot make boil the ocean by running a ransomware inside your system to see whether 95% of my system is getting infected or not. Very difficult. Nobody can do that. But that is what you need to understand. You have a assumed breach of 10 systems and trying to do something there and getting a assurance and going to the board and telling that, hey, I got an assurance that nothing can happen to me. Ask yourself these questions. Are you really immune to this attack if you do this kind of testing? You need to boil the ocean in a different way. You need to do a stress test. You need to run on the treadmill to find out that to what extent you can go. That is where I think a framework of stress testing is required. So what you should do, what is the missing element? Missing element is we don't have any stress scenario which is linked to the business. We don't believe in that. Not that deliberately, we have not got evolved to that stage. So that is something which is very close to my heart. In fact, I recently authored a research paper which was published in, you can search for that, where I have linked the cyber security risk with the business risk and developed some 10-15 models. That how do you really, if the vulnerability percentage come down, it will affect profit, it will affect the 10 parameters of business and 10 parameters of cyber security. I'm just trying to correlate those things. These are all, my purpose of telling this thing is to take your feedback and contribute to the body of knowledge. Not that it will be implemented, you can just go and start implementing stress testing. At least evangelize stress testing. I mean, if not today, another 1-2 years, this stress testing framework will come to the picture. Then we don't have any feedback loop. Seriously, we don't have any very organized feedback loop, whatever you do. Then, as I said we don't have a very clear framework of that. Then the steps to perform the stress testing, nothing new, same thing, define the scenario, assess the potential impact, define the testing parameter, conduct the stress test, evaluate result, revise management strategy and monitor and update. Very typical risk management steps. Coming to framework, I just wanted to write a framework, the same thing I have written and made a feedback loop here and the risk management practice, because if you get a feedback, you can define your risk management practices. So just as a framework, I was just doing a Google search. I found little interesting thing, like 9th March 2023, the ECB, the European Central Bank, they have announced that all the regulated entities of European Central Banks, they have to do a thematic stress test of cyber resilience. What would come, we'll see, because it just happened in 9th of March, 10 days before. Then, MS, Monetary Authority of Singapore, in 2021, they have asked the regulated entities of Monetary Authority of Singapore to do a stress testing of cyber security. Most interesting and most matured, I think, in this is New Zealand. The Reserve Bank they call it the Reserve Bank, also the central bank is called Reserve Bank of New Zealand. They have said that you have to model that what can happen to you, what kind of cyber risk or cyber attack can happen to you in next 25 years, and then model your balance sheet accordingly. And banks have started doing it. Believe me, banks have started doing it. What they are doing is they have modeled various scenarios. They have modeled denial of service attack. They have modeled a lot of attack to the critical infrastructure. And model means what? They have said that if these are the parameters which goes up, what is my financial portfolio will come down, or what would be the impact to my financial portfolio. banks are supposed to give it to the central bank. It has happened in New Zealand, and this has been happening for the last 2 years. So I just wanted to give this with my last some text, which I feel that I said that cyber drill is nothing but just a readiness test. It doesn't talk about the resiliency or stress. Simulation is a very integral part. I don't want to recommend something here. You can have cyber range in a very different form or what, but simulation is required. In financial system, they do a lot of simulation using techniques like Monte Carlo and all, and they do a lot of things there. And they simulate a banking environment and do a stress testing. Here, we have to either use cyber range or something. Let's think about that. And production environment, please avoid it. Don't be enthusiastic in doing it in the production environment. Any stress testing in production environment, you know what Pawan was saying, you'll go to jail only, nothing will happen. And the final thing is, any stress test scenario, you have to necessarily find a black swan. You don't believe that Australia is not yet discovered. Till Australia was discovered, everyone was thinking that swan is white. The moment Australia was discovered, people started thinking that there is a black swan. So black swan event necessarily means that low probability and high impact events. Please factor that, let's factor that and make a scenario. And in 1 minute, 30 seconds, madam, 30 seconds. In stress test, there are two concepts which is very familiar. People talk about that. One is sensitivity analysis, one is scenario test. Sensitivity analysis talk about a particular event. Like I talk that what would be the effect of ransomware to my organization or my business. That is one test. That is sensitivity test. When you talk about scenario, actually talk about multiple tests. So that is precisely the difference between scenario test and sensitivity test. So that's all. I just wanted to flag certain ideas which I have been thinking to develop. Not yet matured, but I think banker's friend here be alert that Reserve Bank is going to definitely, because such a progressive central bank in this country, they would definitely come and tell you that you should start doing stress testing of cyber security. So just giving you a heads up for that. Thank you very much.